Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen. This week, a very special guest, one of the trailblazers of the New England women's wrestling, none other than Mistress Belmont. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Can I call you Joe? You introduced yourself as Joseph. Can I call you Joe?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. It's good to be here with you, Joe. I really appreciate it.
Same here. It's a pleasure to have you here. You know, you've always been one of the most respected wrestlers in the New England area. So we certainly, a lot of fond memories and just lots of great quality matches that you've given the New England scene. So I want to thank you for your contributions first.
Well, thank you. It's it's the way that I see it. I've never aspired to be the best women's wrestler. I just want to be entertaining. And so I guess the whole point is as long as people remember a few of my matches, then I've done what I set out to do. So yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. You certainly have. Let's rewind to the very beginning. Growing up as a kid, when did you first discover pro wrestling first and foremost? And what were some of your hobbies?
Okay. When I first discovered wrestling, we didn't have a television when I was a kid. My parents were deeply religious, and they didn't want to have a television in the house. So I think when I was probably around 7 or 8, maybe younger, they got rid of our television. So I had to, had a very active imagination because I needed to, because I didn't have that kind of a way to entertain myself by watching TV. So my mom would take us to the babysitters, and my babysitter's teenage son would watch. He would start off with the old NWA wrestling. And then I want to say that was at 11. And then at noon, I think this was on a Saturday morning, he would switch to the WWF at the time. Yeah. And so I kind of got exposed to, and that was probably went on for, I'm not sure how many years, just a few, but I remember guys like Ric Flair and the Midnight Express and the Four Horsemen, and all those guys kind of made an impression on me. And then when I was a teenager, my younger brother snuck a black and white television into the house and somehow rigged it up so that he could use when you could still use an antenna on the roof. And we were able to watch WWF Superstars on Saturday mornings. It was probably, I want to say around 1 p.m. So probably Saturday afternoons at 1, I think. And so I kind of came up there, and it was just job matches for an hour and interesting little vignettes and whatnot. And so that's kind of where I cut my teeth on wrestling when I was really young. And so I appreciate a lot of the much older wrestling. And I think that kind of sometimes I feel like that's something that's missing nowadays. It's not the same. So
right. And another nice thing, when we were younger, we're probably about the same age, the wrestling magazines, it's not a thing anymore. Yes. Really. So you're at the store, you're shopping with your parents or whatever, and you see Pro Wrestling Illustrated or The Wrestler or Inside Wrestling. Were you a magazine fan? Did you get to kind of scroll through some of them and see some of the stars that you know?
Oh God, yeah. And it was, and I'm glad that's such a great question, because growing up, I remember like in my Christmas stocking, there would be a rolled up Pro Wrestling Illustrated stuck. And I knew it was from my dad. My mom, she wasn't really into it, but my dad would take us to see wrestling at the Cumberland County Civic Center in Portland, Maine. And so we'd go and watch matches there. And so he would, a couple times a year, get us a Pro Wrestling Illustrated. And that was always such a big deal. And I remember it was right around that time that I remember seeing, I can't remember who it was, but you kind of you would see them in Pro Wrestling Illustrated because it was always so far behind. It was dated from months ahead, but it was several months behind because there's no such thing as the internet at that point. And I guess the only example off the top of my head, which doesn't line up with the time, but like you'd see Scotty the Body wrestling, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, but then he would show up as Raven in the WWE, and you're like, wait a minute, this is the same person. Then you're like, it was before they had pulled the curtain back, and so it was kind of a I feel like I grew up in a wonderful time, like seeing the progression of how wrestling has changed. And but yes, that's such a good question. And I actually, I want to say in 2014, I got a request. They to be on the at the time it was the top 50 women wrestlers. Now the list is much larger, but I was number 50, and I remember. I can't remember who it was that got in touch with me and asked me if I would be interested. I'm like, I really want to be on this list just for my dad, because my dad was like, he bought a bunch of copies, and that's his like go-to thing. He's like, my daughter was in the Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and he shows him my picture and everything, and he's so proud of it. And it's I don't even know if they produce if it's just an online thing anymore, if you can actually go and buy a Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine anymore. But
so it's funny, I haven't seen magazines for years, and
no,
just recently, about 2 weeks ago, I was in a supermarket and there was Pro Wrestling Illustrated on the shelf.
really,
And
it's
it kind
still
of
around.
it took me back, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
so yeah, it is there. I guess it's very limited, it's not available everywhere, and it's not a monthly thing. I don't think it's kind of
Okay.
periodically.
That's one of those things that's gone by the wayside that makes me sad, because I remember the thrill of getting a pro wrestling, just reading everything and looking at the ratings of who was the top wrestler and who was the number one bad guy, and the interviews and stuff. They didn't have, there was no such thing at the time. We didn't know what a shoot was or a work, but they had worked interviews, and it was it was such a great time, and I
Yeah,
miss
before
that.
social media wasn't a thing, and we, with the magazines, we were able to kind of see wrestling from other parts of the world. We were able to look at the other territories, see some stars that maybe aren't a big deal here in this area, but you kind of get a good feel of different parts of the world and pro wrestling. And like you said, the charts, that was always fun to look at.
Yes, yes,
Independent promotions, top 10 on the roster,
yep.
even New England promotions would be listed. And
Oh yeah, and there was a time where you would go to the back and you could see the. I remember when I would go to the Cumberland County Civic Center, I'd run to at the time it was Laverdier as it became Rite Aid or whatever. But I remember going and getting the Pro Wrestling Illustrated and trying to see if anybody had published the results. It would always be months after, but and sometimes somebody would write in with the results, and I'd be like, that's the same card that was most of the same matches that you didn't. Nobody, like I say, it was before the internet, so they would have the same cards in a lot of the I guess what would now be considered house shows or whatnot. So
yeah, and it would be a good opportunity for repetition, and we didn't
yeah,
understand that as fans, obviously, but they're on the road, they're doing all these towns, like you said, they're not televised, so you can get away with it, and that way they're maybe ready for a pay-per-view match, when it is time
yeah,
to do it, or Monday Night Raw, whatever it may be. So
yeah.
yeah, good times, and a great time to grow up a wrestling fan.
Yes, and I feel bad for the much younger generation, because I'm almost 49, so I feel so bad for the younger people, because they didn't, unless they go back and watch the older stuff, they've missed Michael Hayes in his heyday, and that sort of, those are the things that stand out in my mind. That and when I'm a faithful listener of Jim Cornette, and when I listen to him talk about some of the things, I actually remember when some of those things happened. And it's and nowadays now a lot of things are on the internet and stuff like that, and you can go back and watch, but it's not the same as being able to see it as it was happening.
Right. And it was kind of nice in that time, being younger and not knowing what was real and what was fake,
Yeah.
and the curtain wasn't fully pulled. So it was nice.
Yeah.
So Cumberland County Civic Center, you mentioned that you
Yes.
used to go to shows there with your father. Do you remember your very first live event in person? And if so, maybe some of the people that were on the card?
I want to say the only thing, I don't remember the exact first show that I went to. I do remember Brutus the Barber Beefcake was on there, and he was my favorite growing up. For some reason, I was fascinated with his the whole hair cutting and all that nonsense, and his whole getup was I thought was great. And he was there, and I want to say if you are any sort of a wrestling historian, you would know, because I'm not, like I said, I'm terrible with dates and things like that. But it was when Shane Douglas was there as part of the Dynamic Dudes. They came out with skateboards.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What now? Do you have any idea of a ballpark as to what year that would be?
So that was probably, oh geez, maybe 80, 89. I don't know.
Wow.
I'm guessing it's probably
Yeah,
somewhere around there.
that sounds about right. Because I was probably maybe an early teenager or somewhere right around there, like somewhere between the ages of 10 and 13, I'm thinking. So, wow. That's it feels like such a long time ago. But
Right.
that's the one thing I do remember is I think Bruce Beefcake and Shane Douglas as one half of the Dynamic Dudes was there. I don't know if his partner was there, but I do remember him being there.
And do you remember who your dad's favorites were? Did he have any favorites that he talked about?
My dad has actually asked me, because my dad's he reads a lot, and he watches. At this point, my dad's 83, so he can't do as much as he used to. So we watches a lot of movies and stuff. He actually asked me his favorite was Crazy Luke Graham, and he's asked me to get try to find, and I looked and I couldn't find it. I'm terrible at searching it because I don't have the patience for it, but I tried to find the match on YouTube at the very least of anything with Luke Graham and I want to say Tarzan Tyler. He's mentioned. So he goes. My dad was more of a boxing guy, but he did mention he loved Crazy Luke Graham. So that was his thing.
So at what point did you realize, this might be something I want to try? Maybe I'll give it a go.
I never knew women could wrestle until much later because, in only being able to see, Saturday see wrestling on Saturdays for an hour. And it was all, a job guy versus somebody from the regular roster. I never saw a women's match. And so I never gave it a thought that women could wrestle until, I do remember seeing Sensational Sherry and thinking she was amazing. And she wasn't wrestling, she was managing. And she wasn't afraid to tear it up. And I think that's kind of when I started so my first aspiration was to be a manager like Sensational Sherry. I didn't care for Elizabeth because I felt like she just went out there and stood and looked pretty, whereas Sherry wasn't afraid to slap some faces and get in on it. And it wasn't until much later that I realized she was actually a wrestler, and I kind of started researching her wrestling matches, and I would do spots in some when I was coming up in wrestling. I would say we're going to do a Sensational Sherry spot. We'd go through something that that she would do, like I remember distinctly there was a full Nelson, and you break it and put your feet on the ropes and the girl drops you. And but she was such a fantastic wrestler, but I didn't even remember how. I want to say I was probably in my 20s when I finally realized that women could, because I went through a spell where I stopped watching wrestling, and then I came back to it. And right around the time I started watching wrestling, I want to say was the Attitude Era, the very early Attitude Era. And so I would see, right around the time I started watching seriously when China became a thing, and then she started wrestling. And I think that was right around the time that I learned that women there were actual women wrestlers. And that's when, so probably it was I started training when I was 27. So it was probably in my early 20s. And then I was kind of like, I gotta figure out where I can do this. And I always say it's my younger brother's story, but he went to an independent wrestling show in Dover, New Hampshire. And my younger brother's a big guy. And he went and sat in the he was just there to watch the show. And everybody thought he was what everybody calls a plant. And so people kept asking him, are you a wrestler? Are you a wrestler? And one of the wrestlers actually came out at intermission and came up to him and said, hey, you should, there's a wrestling school in Manchester. And it was Steve Bradley's wrestling school. And he said, you should come by. And so my brother went up and checked it out, started going to practice, and he called me. And this was I remember it distinctly. It was in November. It would have been 2002. November 2002. And he said, you've got to come up and check out this place. This is what you want to do. Because I had mentioned that I wanted to wrestle, but I didn't know anything about wrestling schools. And at that point, the internet was still pretty new. So it wasn't as prolific as it is today. And so I went up to the school with him, and in February, I took out a loan from the bank and paid for it all up front and learned to wrestle. So that's so I started training in February of 2023. Excuse me, 2003, not 23. Yeah.
Wow. And, basically, when it comes to standing out, that's what a pro wrestler wants to do, right? Is stand out and have their unique look or gimmick. And you certainly have done that. You've had a great look, and you've had a look that has been different from the other independent wrestlers. So your style, what was it influenced by? And kind of tell us how you pieced together the Mistress Belmont gimmick.
Well, in the beginning, I was when Steve was still alive, and I started wrestling because for the first probably year, I think I wrestled just for Steve, and because I didn't feel I was ready to go somewhere else. And he named me the Slave Girl, so I started wrestling as the Slave Girl, and I agreed. Basically, I said, yeah, I don't, because my brother had told him I was kind of a goth chick in a way. And so he's like, oh, I love that. And so he kind of wanted a goth girl. And in his mind, he kind of foresaw my gimmick as being, I want to say the character's name it's Rob Zombie's wife. I think it's Baby in House of a Thousand Corpses, I think. And so he kind of wanted me to kind of emulate that. And so I did, but then I started adding my own elements. For a while, I wore red contact lenses. And when I dyed my hair blue, Steve hated it. He was like, no, it looks terrible. He didn't like it. But then after a while, he's like, you know what? He's like, I actually think I really like you with the blue hair, because he's like, you don't wear it as a gimmick. It's like, it's just you. And I was like, yeah, I'm somebody that, oddly enough, I don't like drawing a lot of attention to myself. I've always said the only time I like to be the center of attention is when I wrestle. I want people to pay attention to me, because if they're not, then I'm not doing my job. But otherwise, I tend to, I like to be kind of just go through life being unnoticed. And so he appreciated that. And we kind of worked on it, and it's evolved over time. In 2017, my husband passed away, and I stopped wrestling for about a year. And Sean Gorman came to me with this idea and said, you know what you should do? It was almost a joke. He said, you know what you should do is you should come out in a wedding dress and a black veil and call yourself the Widow Belmont. And I was like, huh. And so we kind of fleshed it out a little bit. And that's when so for the last, since 2017, the last few years that I wrestled as the Widow Belmont. But for, at this point, I think if I came back, I would just be either Mistress Belmont or plain old Belmont. But I feel like you always have to change and evolve. And I've tried, you always try to see what works, and it's still the same basic character, but I did try to evolve as best as I could. I had a wrestling instructor that thought that I tried to make myself too unattractive, so I ended up losing the red contact lenses and certain aspects of it, because he's like, you look unsexy, and it's like, so I know it's a game you have to play, but I tried to look at it as evolving and not, trying to because I feel like some people, they enjoy uh they enjoy being the good guy because people are always, I have been called so many names. I have been called fat. I have been called ugly. I've been called, because for the first 11 years that I wrestled, I was the bad guy or the heel. And it does help you develop a tough skin. And so not everybody is into that sort, or can take that sort of thing. And I felt like I kind of reveled in it. And I've had little old ladies spit on me. I've made children cry because of my appearance, and all those things. The thing is, you want to elicit a reaction, and if you elicit no reaction, if people are indifferent, then what are you doing? You want to stand out. You want to make yourself stand out. So everything that I've done from I still continue in I'm trying to be a natural bodybuilder. And so all those things have, come from the discipline that I had, because I started training with weights and things like that because I wanted to be a wrestler. I wanted to look like a wrestler, because I felt like at the time when I started it, I was inspired by China. And it's like, she stood out. It's like she was somebody that, wow, nobody fucks with her. Look at her. She could, even men would kind of back off from her. So I wanted to try to set myself apart. Like I said, never aspired to be the best, because I just didn't I knew I could never be the best, because I don't learn the same way as some people. My brother, you could stand outside the ring and say, do this, this, and this, and he can do it, boom, and he's got it. Me, I'm like, okay, I have to have somebody, I have to go over it multiple times. And Steve used to yell at me. He's like, I can see the wheels turning, just do it. And I just couldn't. So I never aspired to be the best, but I just wanted to be memorable. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of where I was at.
Wow. So you kind of touched on it there with you kind of left the door open, could we see you in the ring again?
See, there's this whole thing in my mind that I'm a homebody. I love being home. and I always said, when it stops being fun, that's when I'll stop. And it wasn't that it stopped being fun. It was more of, when I was there at wrestling shows, I realized, man, I could be home, eating cookies and watching TV and just relaxing or whatever. And, but also I feel like, wrestling has changed a lot. Like, I learned a very old school style of wrestling, and, now it's a lot of gymnastics and stuff. And I always say I have the grace of a 3-legged cow. I am just not, I am not graceful and whatnot. And so for me, it was more of like working on basics and things like that and doing basic stuff. And I feel like I'm not flashy enough, but also at this point, it's been a couple of years since I took a bump, and my body is out of, like, physically, I'm sure I could still do it, but I would have to, take bumps again. I'm not ruling it out completely, but I don't see it in my future right now. I did take a booking next weekend. I'm going to be a special referee for a little promotion called Focus Pro Wrestling, and they're crowning their first women's champion. So I'm going to go be the special guest referee. And
nice.
It was the first time I saw New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer, and I was like, wow. Like, that's, it's kind of like a nice little thing to be able to add to the end of your name. So thank you, Joe. And it was just like, it was interesting to see it actually in print like that. I have, you can't really see behind me, but my hallway's behind me, and I got my plaque hanging out in the hallway so that every time I come upstairs, I can see my I think it was 2019. When I was inducted. And it still means like so much to me. And it was something that was still surprises me, and it excites me, because it was just it's a huge honor, in seeing the people that have been inducted into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall. It's such a big deal.
Sure. Yeah. And, in that initial class in 2008, the inaugural class, I should say, There were some posthumous figures that went in that needed to be in. You can't have
Yeah.
a New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame without having a Boston Bad Boy Tony Rumble or
Oh,
a
yeah.
a
Yeah.
Walter Killer Kowalski. So we kind of
Yeah.
built the pillars
Yeah.
and then continued it on each year. And it's been great. It's been great to recognize those talents who, might go unrecognized otherwise. You need that platform to honor these people in and out
Yeah.
of the ring who have done so much for the business. It doesn't matter if you're on television or not. You're still putting in the
Yeah.
time. You're still taking that risk, and you're still doing everything the same, just in different locations. And
Yeah.
so it's great to be able to do that. And I think it's important for New England wrestling because New England wrestling is such a rich history.
Oh God, yeah. There's so much that when I would travel outside of New England, like if I went to say Montreal or down to New Jersey or something like that, people would perk up at certain names that just people that I would see either early on in my when I started or that have since left or whatever. But people would uh, New England seems to be it's a very talent rich area, and it always has been. So I'm very proud to be part of the kind of New England scene. So
And let's talk about your trainer. A big part of the New England scene for a long time. Super bad Steve Bradley. You touched on him a little earlier. He was inducted posthumously into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in 2009 by Brian Fury.
okay, yep,
Yeah, and he was under a developmental deal for many years with the WWF. Um, you know, Very influential, ahead of his time,
yeah.
without a doubt. What memories do you have of Steve Bradley? What was he like as a person working with him behind the scenes?
Steve was he was one of those guys that um, women would bring their kids to they'd bring their 16-year-old boy to wrestling school, and the mom would end up sitting in the office and Steve would flirt with them, and they would get all sorts of, because Steve had this crazy amount of charisma. And I remember Steve tended to like Steve and my brother got along really well, and it was Steve appreciated the guys that didn't want to come in and just ask him about wrestling. He liked me because I'd be like, he'd be like, "What, Kath, how's it going?" And I would say, "Oh, I went fishing with my dad this weekend." He would light up, and he would just like, "Oh, you went fishing," and he liked wrestling was a part of his, there was a big part of his life, but at the same time, it wasn't all that he was. And so I always got to see I remember he would call me when he would be out flyering. He'd call me at 3 a.m. and he's out putting up wrestling flyers because he couldn't sleep in East Bumfuck, Massachusetts or something like that. And it would be he'd call me up and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm sleeping, man." And he's like, "Well, I'm out flying." And then he would just start talking like a machine gun about telling me about he used to play baseball and all these things. And I have very fond memories of Steve, but I also have some, not great memories just because he obviously he died of a heroin overdose, and it came from, basically a pill addiction. And so you would come in sometimes, and when he was good, he was awesome. But when he wasn't good, he was not good to be around, because he would come in and he would just have his head in his hands at his desk and be like, "What?" We didn't know what was wrong. And it took a while. I wasn't really growing up in a religious house. I wasn't exposed to any sort of addiction or anything like that. So I didn't understand it. And I actually, when he died, I had to have my brother John had to explain to me. I'm like, "Is heroin the stuff that you use, the spoon and a lighter?" And he's like, "No, no, no, no." And he explained to me, you know, how it kind of works. And like I say, I feel bad talking about it. And I always felt that his death, something wasn't right about it, and it never got investigated because it was I think the police thought it was just another drug overdose. But Steve was somebody that was like I remember when he died, my brother and I went to see his parents, and I remember his mom said something that was just very profound to me about regarding Steve. And she said, uh, because he had overdosed once before, and he thought he didn't take it seriously, and he went through the whole rehabilitation program. And she said, Steve thought he was invincible. And I said, yeah, I really did too. The thought never crossed my mind of anything ever happening to Steve. And when he passed away, I felt lost. Both my brother and I, and actually some of the other people that trained with us, we were like, what do we do? We didn't know what to do. And we would go to other wrestling schools, and it wasn't the same. Steve was like just a natural. He was, I remember getting in the ring with him, and he just like went all around me and put me in things and had me put him in things. And I wasn't doing anything. I was just standing there, and he was just doing it. There's ways to, if you want somebody to put you in a headlock and they're not going, you put yourself into a headlock. And he was doing that. And I'm like, geez. And it was fascinating. And I feel like the wrestling world did lose a huge talent. And I feel like had he not passed away, my course would have been very, very different than what it was. I'm very happy with, where it went, but at the same time, I know it would have been much different if Steve would have. I think I could have achieved so much more, and actually even been better at what I was doing.
Yeah.
Had he survived. So, and I always appreciate. Thank you for bringing him up. I always appreciate when people talk about Steve. I don't ever want him to be forgotten, because he was such a huge influence to a lot of people in New England, very recognizable. People that are serious wrestling fans know who he is, and it means a lot when anybody ever even brings him up. So thank you.
Well, that's what it's all about, and that's what the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame is partially about. You have to keep those memories alive and those talents, and I think it's very important to the fans of today. They don't know who Steve Bradley is, but they will know who Steve Bradley is by seeing interviews like this, by seeing videos.
Yeah.
It keeps them alive. So it's a good thing.
Definitely.
Well, let's touch base on a few of the promotions you've worked for over the years.
Okay.
I'll kind of mention a promotion to you, and if you have any memories from that promotion or anything that stands out. Ringside Entertainment.
Ringside Entertainment. Wow. They run mostly in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually had I think when I first was coming up, I had some of the most fun matches at Ringside Entertainment. They always drew really well. I want to say the Everett Rec Center is for some reason ringing a bell. So like I said, I have a terrible memory. So I always enjoyed working for Ringside. And that's one of those places that if I worked for Ringside, I always knew I was working with one of my I would refer to them as one of my wives, Alicia Edwards or Nikki Rocks. You got to give props to Nikki Rocks. It was always a girl that I had, Luscious Latasha. The little group of I always call them the stalwarts of New England that you could always count on, the ones that if they had a new girl, they would always pick, one of us girls to work with them. So it was always one of those girls. And so, yeah, I have fond memories of Ringside.
Awesome. And how about NWA on Fire?
Ooh, NWA on Fire. That I always ended up having to drive long distances up into Maine, which I'm from Maine, so I love wrestling in Maine. And it was one of the first places that I was like, I remember thinking, wow, this is a really professionally run. In the back, they were like, watch the monitor. I think it was one of the Savoldis came back. It was like, watch the monitor. Don't be doing the same finish that somebody else is doing. They were very, they wanted to make sure that, moves weren't repeated. And I don't know. I just remember thinking, these guys are like super professional. And it was a whole group of people that I was exposed to. I was used to wrestling with a lot of the same people. And when I went to NWA on Fire, there would be people that they were bringing in people from like Mexico and people from all over the country, and I didn't know a lot of them, and it was actually a really fun show. I do remember having to drive long distances, but it was I always felt it was worth it. They were a good company to work. Are they still around?
I don't think so, but I could be
I
wrong.
don't think
But
so
I
either.
haven't heard of them in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I haven't either. So
How about Front Row Wrestling?
Front Row, wow.
You've done a lot over the years, so it's easy to
it's
some of them, I'm sure.
I'm trying to I remember trying to make a list of all the promotions I'd wrestled for, and some of them, wow, I remember the promotion, but I can't remember anything my dad keeps a diary, and he'll say to me, well, he used to when I was still wrestling, he'd be like, do you remember where you wrestled a year ago? And I'm like, Dad, I can't remember where I wrestled 2 weeks ago. And he would be like, you were in, and he would give me some place, and I'd be like, I don't even remember being there. Yeah. And I should have kept better track of like where I went and who I wrestled. And for a while I was trying to do that, but when you're wrestling, usually 2 to 3 times on the weekend, every weekend, you just like, I just don't, you don't want to take the time. So I should have been better about that sort of thing. But so Front Row, I'm really drawing a blank right now. And I apologize to anybody from Front Row. It makes me feel terrible.
That's okay. How about NCW? I'm assuming that's JC Marks.
NCW. Where did they run out of?
So they were usually Rhode Island, Bristol area, also Massachusetts. They were kind of bouncing around.
Wow, we're digging deep here. I felt like there was NCW. I'm not really. I'm not remembering. Like I said, I'm really bad about that sort of thing.
Yeah, some of those promotions were, obviously in your early days. So
yeah,
when you were first getting started, of course. How about Top Rope Promotions?
Oh, Top Rope! I had some of the most fun matches. Top Rope. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Top Rope. I got to wrestle. Nobody knows. I actually have wrestled. I'm known for. The best match I ever did was in a cage. The NECW cage match in Quincy, Mass. But I'd done one previous cage match that nobody knew because I don't think it was even recorded. I wrestled Angelina Love in a cage match for Top Rope. It was something that another girl got the booking, and she's like, I don't feel like doing it. I'm like, what? It's like Angelina Love. Come on, And so I was like, yeah, I'll take it. But I'd wrestled for Top Rope a number of times. They always had to. That was when I think they usually would have like a big name on the card, and so a bunch of times I've met some. I think I got wrestling advice from Ron Simmons on one of their shows. Because he would have. They always had people, big names on there. And so you got to meet some of your heroes and stuff like that. And, like Jim Duggan, he's like your grandfather. And I was just like, oh my God, I get to shake his hand. I'm Jim. And it's like, you get to kind of giddy because it's, I remember seeing Jim Duggan at the Cumberland County Civic Center. And so, I have, Top Rope was always a good place to wrestle. So, and I think they're still around.
They are.
I want to say I wrestled for them towards the end of when I was really starting to slow down. I think I still wrestled for them. So, yeah, they were always good to me too.
Yeah, I believe they still do the Kowalski Cup every year.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I love that stuff like that keeps going.
Absolutely. Keep the name alive. Now, how about Sheldon Goldberg, New England Championship Wrestling? You mentioned NECW. Of course, he also ran Triple W as well.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts on both of those promotions over the years?
Oh, my best stuff was in NECW and Triple W. And, I have so much love in my heart for Sheldon and all the gentlemen that I know that's they split ways, but with like the West, with the West brothers or Matt and Kyle, and they were like, that was like my home. NECW was my home, and I had my best matches. Sheldon and Matt and Kyle were the first people that I remember. Sean Gorman wrote my title run, and when I that ended with the cage match that I had with Lish. And I remember he wrote it out and he's like, I want to pitch this to them. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for that. And he pitched it to them and they said, all right, yeah, let's give this a try. And they were the first place that I remember when Sheldon Goldberg was one of the first people I thanked when I had my speech. I tried to write a speech and I couldn't. I was like, you know what? I just want to get up and thank everybody that helped me along the way and made me who I became. And Sheldon Goldberg was like, I think after you. I thank you first. And I thank Sheldon Goldberg second, because he was somebody that saw something in me and had faith in me. Because a lot of people say, oh, titles don't mean anything. But it's like, to me, if somebody puts a title on you because they see something in you and think that you can carry their promotion or that you can draw for them, that means a lot. That's like everything. And so I have nothing but good things to say about especially Sheldon and Matt and Kyle and everybody that when it felt like a real production. They actually they were one of the first places that had a lot of places didn't have a video screen. They had a video screen. I had an entrance, with a video, and it felt like you were part of something big when you were there. And it was the same with the Triple W shows. That was I first started wrestling outside of WFA or Steve's promotion. Nikki Rocks got me into Triple W, which I want to say was the first all girls pro. I don't know which came first, Shimmer or Triple W. And I want to say there's some debate about that, if I remember correctly. But I felt like felt so privileged to be a part of that. And I still, every now and then I'll drop Sheldon. I'll, just say hello or whatever. And, he's gone through some stuff lately, but it's always good to see. And he's written books and stuff like that. And it's NECW and Triple W have a very special place in my heart. Like I say, my best stuff was there. And the title run before and after, I got to do so much, and they were so willing to let me kind of do what I wanted, and guide me along the way. And so, nothing but good things to say about them.
And then, of course, you were a 2-time women's champion for Chaotic Wrestling.
Yes.
Your memories there?
Chaotic was at the time when I was there, it was kind of they didn't use a lot of girls, because I remember at the beginning pretty much it was Nikki Rocks, and she was the one that kind of got me in there, and she and I had a little thing, and then I think she either got out of wrestling or moved on or moved out of the area or something like that. But then they had a couple of girls that were up and coming there. And it was always, I remember having girls come up to me and be like, hey, can you get me into Chaotic? And I was like, listen, I'm lucky to be there. I don't know if I want to, push my luck, but I always felt like it was one of those places I was privileged to work. And they had good girls. And so many girls came out of there. Sasha Banks and Davienne, and of course, Nikki Rocks was there. And they had so many girls that Casey Ray doesn't wrestle anymore, but she, when she was up and coming, I thought that she was like, she could have been on TV. All she needed was just to be, I always liked working with her, because it was like, okay, what can you do? And she's like, I can do this, this, and this. And I would say, can you touch your foot to the back of your head? And she's like, yeah. She was like a gymnast. And so I was fascinated by her. I was like, I could tie you up in a pretzel and pick you up and throw you, and it would be great, a great match. And so I always, I got to wrestle in front of good houses. They always drew well, and ran the place pretty professionally, and I always felt like they were I think that might've been one of the first places that I worked as a baby face. It just kind of happened out of nowhere, because it so happened that Lish, I call her, I know her as Lish. I think everybody else knows her as Alicia Edwards. Is it on TV? Is it Alicia or Alicia?
I think it is Alicia.
Alicia. Okay. Yeah. Cause we all call her Lish.
Yeah.
So, okay. So Alicia Edwards. And I remember she was a heel, and it was supposed to be like a heel match, but they started coming up for me. And so I just went with it. And so I said, well, I guess I was the baby face this time, but yeah, really enjoyed it. I felt very privileged because who was the first? I'm trying to remember. I was right in they had just introduced, they had this beautiful belt. They just crowned a women's champion, their very first women's champion. And I was somewhere towards the beginning of that. I wasn't the very first champion, but I was somewhere sprinkled in the beginning. And I was very proud of that. And still look back at it, I still have pictures of me with Adam Barisano and coming out with the chaotic women's belt. I'm like, damn, that's a good looking belt. So I don't think they still have the women's belt. I think they've changed it, but it was I felt that was an awesome thing to be a part of.
Now let's talk about Alicia Edwards. You've known her for a long time. She's
Yes.
been a part of the New England scene for what seems like forever. For
Yes.
many years, she was Alexis Nevaeh for the fans that know her as that. And of course, she's a member of the system now on TNA and still going to this day. What are your personal memories of working with Lish over the years, and what she's like outside of the business?
Lish is, like I said, it's hard for me to call her Alicia because I've always known her as Lish, but she is just one of the. She comes in and she would always be like, I'd say, Lish, what do you want to do? And she'd be like, I'll do this and this, and then you take over. I'm like, no, come on, you need a bigger shot, bigger shine or whatever. And she was very easy to work with. There were times where, we would say that she is such a little thing, but she was a crowbar, and she could, don't mess with her. She could beat the bag out of you, but she was so fun to work with. And I remember when we knew that we were going to do that cage match going into it, we were both kind of, you get scared a little bit, not, scared of there's a lot that can go wrong. And and we had both talked it over. I felt like we put together like I felt like it was a really solid match, and she was so good to me during the match. She's like, if you do this, I'll do this. And we always had great chemistry. And the thing is, like, we would get booked outside of New England. I remember driving to New Jersey and wrestling Lish in New Jersey. And it's like, wow, there's this whole plethora of girls. She should be wrestling somebody else. But she and I have wrestled each other. I have probably wrestled her more than anybody.
Wow.
And I'm so proud of her for like going as far as she had. I think she could have certainly held her own in the WWE. I'm glad that she's in TNA, and she's made a name for herself, and she's doing well. She's got a great little family and whatnot. And so I'm very proud of her. And, I always love seeing, New England girls making a name for themselves. So, and she deserves it. I think she's been wrestling probably a little bit longer than I have, if not the same amount of time. So she's been doing it for a long time, and she's, we could wrestle each other, and, we could wrestle each other 100 times and have 100 different matches, because she would just get creative. She would come out of nowhere. She's like, hey, I want to try this. I'm like, yeah, sure. We would do that. And she would actually come up with stuff for me. I remember she actually called, I used to do a sit out choke. I guess, I would call it a Baldo bomb. It was, I'm pretty sure it was invented by Prince Albert, but you pick a sit out choke, and she's like, could you catch me if I came off the second rope and catch me like that? And I said, well, I can try. And it kind of came out of nowhere, and I thought she was going to hit the mat, and then I would go up. And so I caught her, and she just wrapped her legs around me, and we were already there. And I was like, oh, shit. She called it, and we tried to. I've had other girls that, like, we saw that spot and they wanted to do it with me. Never worked. I'd fall over or something like that, or I would catch them and I'd drop them really quick or something. The only person I was ever able to pull it off with was Lish, and it's something she called. She made it up in her brain. She's like, I wonder if we could do this. And I was like, yeah, sure. We didn't even try it ahead of time. We just kind of threw it in there, and it worked. So she's a tremendously talented lady, and much love in my heart for her. And I love seeing her succeed. So yeah, nothing but good things to say about Lish.
And let's touch base again briefly on the PWI Top 50 Women.
Yep.
That was 2013 that
Oh,
you
was
were
it? Wow.
at. Yep. 2013. Obviously, your dad's so excited.
Yes.
What was your initial reaction when you very first? And did you see it on the shelf first, or did you? How did that come about?
They had told me
Okay.
we'd gone back and forth by email, and like I said, I wish I could remember who it was that I went back and forth with, but and they said, we're going to put you on at number. Basically, it was between me and like one or two other girls for the very last number 50 spot, and I kind of, that's when I kind of busted it. And it wasn't like I was, I really wanted to be on it, but at the same time, I wasn't trying to use my dad. But I was like, my dad would be stoked if so they ended up, they gave it to me. It was the one and only time I ever made the list, but and that's all I made it once. And like I say, and I just remember thinking, in going over my mind, I wanted to see the list because I'm like, who are the girls that they didn't get? Because I knew, I knew enough girls that were like super talented because they also had the girls that were on TV and stuff. And I of course, was more interested in the girls that, I associate with, regularly. And so there was, I can't even remember who else would have been around at the time and who was left off, but I just remember feeling, it was a huge honor. I actually, in my hallway, I got a little, I cut it out, but it's a photocopy. I can't seem to find my original copy of because it was a color picture. My husband had taken the picture of that I had used, and I didn't like it because I was cockeyed in the picture, and but the picture itself, I looked pretty good, and I didn't realize it was 2013, Jesus. But I remember when I got the news, I was actually, my husband and I were waiting to go. Somebody in his family had gotten married, and we were waiting to go into the wedding. And I was looking at my emails on my phone. I was like, oh my God, they gave it. I'm number 50. And we were so excited. And I think it kind of overshadowed my excitement about going to a wedding. I was more excited about being number 50 on the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Top 50 Women. So yeah, it was a huge deal for me. And especially, like I said, for my family as well. And it's still something I'm very proud of, because now I want to say they have the top 250 women. Because back when I first started, it was like there weren't nearly as many girls as there are now. And it's I think a lot of it is more accessibility. There's also more exposure. It's I wasn't somebody that walked around and when I would introduce myself to somebody, it's like, hi, I'm Kathy. I'm a professional wrestler. That wasn't really my thing. And so when people found out, it was like this kind of, oh my God, it's this cool thing that, and I'm just like, well, it's just something, I do something different and weird on the weekends, but, and I never lost sight of the fact that, what I did was really a cool thing, but it's, you try to, in everyday life, I'm still still just a normal person. So
Yeah. Let's talk something about your traveling here. So
okay.
obviously you've taken some deep trips into Maine, like you mentioned.
Oh yeah.
What are some of the different towns, different cities that you've traveled over the years, and maybe some of your favorite venues that you've wrestled in?
One of my favorite places was I would travel to Montreal, which was probably like a 6-hour drive, 5-6 hour drive. But I would drive up to Montreal and wrestle for, at the time, Lufisto. Her name, I knew her as Jen, but Lufisto, she would run an all-girls show up in Montreal. And that was always one of my favorite things to do. She would, I don't know if they ran a school. It might have been in I feel like it was almost a church setting, big open space with a ring, and they always put on a really good show. And Canadians are lovely people. And I would drive into Montreal, and I would, they would say bonjour, and I would say hello, and they would say hello. And it was, I loved going to Montreal. That was one of my favorite places. So wrestling for her all girls show up there. I think it was, NCW Femme Fatales. That's what it was called. And I love going up there. I met, that's where I first met the late Daphne. She was on a show up there. And she was somebody that, like, I was like, wow, she was very, I had like so much respect for her, and she was like very businesslike, but then she kind of relaxed a little bit. We got to chat a little bit. I met there's been a number of girls that came out of the system that worked up there. Jen knew a lot of girls because she traveled a lot. She was actually the first time I ever saw an independent wrestling show. She was wrestling as Precious Lucy in, I want to say, Augusta, Maine. And so so much respect for Lufisto. And I'm trying to think where else it's been, I've gone to New Jersey a few times, to New York a number of times, and I always enjoy traveling. I never went much, but I did wrestle in Vancouver once, but otherwise I haven't gone much further south than New Jersey. So I tended to just stay up in this area. It's not that I have, was against it. I guess I just never put myself out there to go further away. I didn't have that drive. I was hoping that, because like I say, I like to be close to home. So.
Did you ever work for WSU? They were based out of, I think, Jersey.
Yes, I did. Long time. I think I wrestled for them twice. The first time, I remember I wrestled a girl. I remember the match not going very well. But then I was in a battle royal with with a bunch of girls, and they took really good care of me. I remember that. And I wrestled one other time, but I can't remember who I might have been a handful of times I wrestled for WSU. And I don't think that's it. They're not around anymore, are they?
No, they're not.
No, it's too bad. Is a lot of I assume Shimmer is still around.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, because
I've heard of them in recent years. So
yeah, because I remember for a time Shimmer was like the place to be, right. And I debated, but I was like, it's a long ways away. I'd have to. So I never did the Shimmer thing. Unfortunately, I probably should have. And I know that I remember Joey Eastman telling me that they were asking, they wanted to book me, and I was kind of like, well, they wanted me to send out a videotape, and I don't do technology very well, so I did like, I got to have somebody make me a DVD or something, so I just didn't. So that's my own mistake.
And you say you're a homebody. What do you like to do just to pass time? Are you a movie person, or kind of tell us a little, pull the curtain back a little bit and just kind of tell us what you're up for?
The biggest thing, I pretty much, I go to the gym quite regularly, not every day, but I go pretty much 5 to 6 days a week. I like to bake. Last night I actually baked cookies. So I'm going to put frosting on the cookies so I can have cookies today. I eat bad one day a week, which is today on Saturdays. Otherwise I work a normal job. I work second shift because I like being able to sleep in the morning, and then I go to the gym, and then I go to work. My life is very routine, but at this point, like I say, I'm almost 49, and I like reading. So I do a lot of reading. I consume way too much crime television. I love crime television, true crime stuff. I like adult cartoons. But for the most part, like, I'm home, hanging out with my cats. Love, there's always, I own a house, so I'm privileged to own a house, and that's like I always said one of my biggest dreams growing up wasn't to be famous or rich or anything. I'm terrible with money, so I don't care to be rich, but I just wanted to own a house, and I have a house. I got the little white picket fence outside, and so it's almost time to rake the leaves out there. And I'm in this is my library / meditation studio, and so that I'm always trying to do things to, keep my house tidy and stuff like that. So it's I live a very mundane existence, but but I always say that I tell people I have lived an awesome life. If something were to happen to me right now, I'm cool because I lived an awesome life from my, mid 20s when I discovered myself until, I finished wrestling. Like I have so many stories and whatnot. I've seen a lot, I've done a lot, and a lot of it has, probably 90% of that has to do with wrestling. Just being able to travel places and spending time with people, and 6-hour car rides with a good friend can yield an extremely close relationship with somebody. And so it's so I have good friends. I've met a lot of people. I know a lot of people, and people are kind. When my husband died, it was the outpouring. Like I was so touched. Like I had people putting on wrestling shows, if in his honor and things like that. And it's very it shows you the goodness of people. And but for the most part, at this point, like I say, I've my time of living in a crazy world is kind of past, and I'm okay with that. So for me, it's like a good weekend is like just relaxing, having eating pizza, watching crime TV, and hanging out with my cats. So it's boring, but it like I love it. I'm very blessed to say that I have a great life.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you've had the dial on 100 for so long.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
as you said, so you need both sides of that. You need
Yeah.
that time to now be like, all right, let me
Yeah.
enjoy, some
Yeah.
life instead of just going crazy full throttle all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because sometimes I think about some of the stories that like I remember uh I remember remember driving a wrestler. I'm not even going to name him because I don't want to I like he wanted to smoke weed in my car, so I smoked weed with this guy that was on TV, and then we stopped at a rest area because it was me and I had brought my opponent with me. She was this girl that like she told her parents were like Egyptian, and she wasn't allowed to. She would have dishonored her family if they knew that she was wrestling. So she was like sneaking around to wrestle, and so I always liked her. She was so sweet. Her name was Catherine as well. And she's long, so she wasn't in wrestling very long. But I remember she was in the back. She's like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm like, if this guy says to smoke weed, then just hold it, pretend, And then he went into the bathroom, got really messed up, and I have so many stories of just weird shit like that. Seeing things and being around things. I've witnessed a lot of things. I'm not a party person. I live pretty clean. So for the most part, I could stand in the periphery and just watch, and it was still a good show. So yeah.
Any memories of Barbie?
Oh, Barbie. She was Barbie was I especially loved her look. It came out, you never knew what she was going to wear. And she was just she kind of exuded this coolness that I was like, man, I wish I could be a tenth as cool as Barbie. She was just so cool. And she has grown like I'm going to try to say this without getting emotional, but I remember when my husband died, I asked Davey, my friend Davey, or Davey N, to let people know. And the first person that I kind of heard from, actually, I remember I got up, my husband died. I found out on a Saturday. Yes, because I'd worked and I was waiting to hear from him. I didn't hear from him. And then I remember the word kind of got out, and I was just trying to process it and everything. And I remember she texted me and said she was worried about me and everything, asked me for my address. So I sent her my address. Like 2 days later, a box of fancy English muffins and jellies and things like that showed up at my door. And it had a little note from her. It was from her. And I was like, and I thanked her for it. She's like, I know that, you need to eat. And I was like, that was like the sweetest thing. She was like, and honestly, when he first died, when you go through something like that, when you lose a loved one, family member or whatever, you don't have any appetite for eating. And I remember That's what I lived off from when it first happened was Barbie had sent me something. It was like one of the nicest things, and it's something I'll never forget. Obviously I don't, because I still remember it to this day. I want to say the box arrived on the Tuesday after he passed, but it was just like, it was something that wonderful human being. She's got a gorgeous son. And, it seems like I try to follow her because I think she moved back to New York, I want to say. And so I try to follow her on social media when I can, and make sure she's doing well. And she seems to be. So I don't think she wrestles anymore, but I remember I was going to try to make a little comeback, and I got derailed by a wrist injury. And she said she would be willing to come back and wrestle me one last time. And I would have been down for that. But it just didn't end up working out. But yeah, nothing but love for Barbie.
And it's little gestures like that are sometimes more meaningful than big gestures. I mean, those really mean something, So,
oh yeah, absolutely.
How about memories of Amber?
Amber, oh my God, she was just like, I always thought of Amber as like just this little ray of sunshine. She was, anytime I saw her, she was smiling. She was sweet. I remember, I want to say, I think it was a Top Rope show. It was at a fair. And I remember I spent the day with her. We were just hanging out, and because they would, they would have like a couple of matches, and then you'd wait, and then a couple more matches or whatever. And I remember spending the day with her. And she's another person that I try to just, follow along on social media, make sure she's doing well, and lovely human being. Like I say, a little ray of sunshine. She and I only wrestled just a couple of times. But and the thing is, she was around the same time I was. We came up, at the same time. So I don't know why we didn't wrestle each other more. But whenever we did, it was I always enjoyed her. Yeah, she was a good girl.
And you mentioned her earlier. Personal memories of Nikki Rocks.
Oh, Nikki Rocks. I have nothing but wonderful things to say about her. Honestly, I never had any issues with anybody. So they're all nice. They're wonderful people, dear to my heart, and especially Nikki Rocks. I always considered her to be like a mentor. And I remember she was the one that I was still training to wrestle. And I've been training for about a year. And Nikki was the one that went to Steve and said, I think she's ready. I could get something out of her. And she was the one that I had my first matches with her, and I learned so much from her. And she was very patient with me, and I was terrible. Nobody ever starts off good, so I was learning from her, and her. She was somebody that should have been more than what she was. And I'm not saying that to diminish her, but she should have been like. I know she did. She had a run in TNA when I know I started watching TNA for the women's matches, because the women's division was so good back at that point in time. And, that was like a big deal for especially us girls in New England, was that Nikki was on TV, and she should have gone further than she did. She had the ability. She understood psychology, and last I knew, I think she owns a gym, I think. She and her husband and children, last I knew, lived in Florida, I think, and she's doing quite well outside. And she was always one of those. I always said that when I came up, Nikki Rocks was sort of like a den mother. She made sure that she helped me get bookings. She helped other girls get bookings. And then when she left, it kind of was like my thing. I tried to make sure the other girls would get bookings, try to help them out, take the new girls under your wing and make sure that they're treated well and that they understand what they're doing, and, the do's and don'ts and things like that. And I think Davey N kind of took the mantle from me. So it kind of went from Nikki Rocks sort of to Lish. Lish, I don't think she was like, I mean, Lish would take care of people, but not in the same way that Nikki Rocks did. And then it went to me, and now I think Davey is the one that has it. Or it's been a while, so I don't know exactly what's going on in the independent scene up here, but yeah, Nikki Rocks was I felt terrible when she stopped wrestling because I felt like wrestling lost this massively talented woman that could have done so much more. I don't think and her time wasn't up, but
Yeah.
she had to, I can understand her frustration, as you get older. I knew probably by my mid 30s that my chances of like big success weren't there. And actually, when I first started, I remember Steve telling me, because like I said, I started when I was 27, and I remember shortly thereafter him telling me, they're only hiring girls under the age of 24 right now. So but he said everything's cyclical. It could come around, and they might start hiring, because at the time they were hiring fitness models that were young, and that wasn't me. So I said, well. He said, just keep at it, and if things will turn around. And it did eventually, but unfortunately, by the time it did, when I sent my stuff to the WWE, I was 39, and I had already aged out, and so I kind of knew that and I'd always been realistic about my success. I never thought I was gonna. I mean, the hope was there. The hope was to make it to the WWE, but I knew my chances were very slim because of my age, and. So I knew that she still had a ways to go, but I think at her age, she might have felt like, she missed her opportunity. I'm not sure, but I always felt bad that she should have been in the WWE. She would have been an amazing addition to their roster.
You mentioned earlier you had a brother in the business. Why don't you tell us how he got started and what his gimmick was? How what was he known as?
He didn't have the same success I did, but then again, he kind of started a family shortly after he started wrestling, and that kind of he still is all. That's why he stopped wrestling. He's all about his family. My younger brother's name is John, and he oddly enough, his real name is John Small, and he's a very big guy. And he wrestled as a. He started, I kind of brought up earlier about being at the wrestling show. And then so he and I actually trained together. He had been training just a few months longer than me. And so I always said that I'm a pretty introverted person. And I think the only reason why I succeeded so much in wrestling was because of my little brother. And I owe a lot to him. And actually, when I was giving my speech, I actually broke down when I was talking about my brother, because my brother means so much to me. And my little brother would give his life for me, and I for him. And so he would encourage me. He was the one that, like, if I couldn't do something, be like, okay, let's get in the ring. He's so much bigger than me. But he would always say, we're going to wrestle the same size. I'm the same size as you, treat me the way that you would a girl your size. And I'd be like, okay. But so I would train with my brother a lot, and he would encourage me. He would, go with me to shows. I always felt bad because it's like there were a lot of times that he would have to watch me just as a bystander. He would go with me to a show, but he wasn't booked to wrestle because he didn't put himself out there. And the thing is, my little brother was so good. And everybody that worked with him, they were always like, they'd be like, they'd be afraid of him. And I'm like, no, my brother's a good guy. He's not going to, and they would be shocked at it because he trained, he was so good that his stuff that looked real, but yet it was so light, and so people would think that he was in there stiffing people, and he wasn't. So guys loved to work with him, and he was easy to work with. And I always feel terrible because he didn't get the recognition that he deserved, but he wasn't searching for that. He actually, because I remember asking him one time, I said, would you go to the WWE if they offered you a contract? And he's like, honestly, I make more money at my normal job, so they'd have to pay me more than what I'm making now. And I'm like, that's fair enough. And so he kind of, once he had his first child, he was kind of, my niece is now 13, I believe, 13 or 14. And once she was born, he was kind of like, yeah, he's like, he told me one time, he's like, every time I take a booking, I'm sitting there, and the whole time I'm thinking about, I could be home with my kid. my wife and kid, and it's great. And I love watching my little brother parent. His kids are super close to him. They are such good kids, and him and his wife, they're an adorable family and whatnot. But I wish that he could have done more. And but he wrestled as John Poe. It was a take on the generic name of John Doe, for like just a random person. So that was his take. Instead of John Doe, it was John Poe. And he was very good friends with Steve as well. Steve, my little brother, everybody likes him. He's such an easygoing guy. And he and Steve were, John's very creative, so Steve would have him build him stuff. And when Steve died, John took it really, really hard, because it was, we all did, but John had been working on this. Steve wanted to build an indoor arena, and it was basically him, John, and our friend Ethan that was also training with us, that were kind of all the three that were working on it. The three of them together, they would spend the night there and just work on it and drink and so when Steve passed and all that kind of went away, it was it was tough. And so shortly thereafter, John, we trained other places and whatnot, and after a certain amount of time, he's just like, I just want to be home with my family. So love my little brother.
Another name from the New England scene, now on television as Mercedes Moné. Prior to that, she was in the WWE as Sasha Banks. But of course, Mercedes KV.
Yes.
What are your memories of her?
I always try to just, she was always Mercedes KV to all of us. She was like I remember the first time I wrestled her, I said, "Where have they been hiding you?" I was like, she was crazy, just crazy good. And I remember saying, what can you do? And we kind of went over some stuff. And I remember she made me think more in terms of being more creative. You didn't have to do basic stuff with her. So, certain things, I don't want to speak too much out of the box, but it's like a comeback, clothesline, back elbow, whatever. It'd be like, okay, give me a clothesline, run up the turnbuckles, come off, give me a flying clothesline, give me then jump up, standing Hurricane Rana, something, or Frankenstein, or so. If she was just she was incredible. And I just remember she would be as what somebody would refer to as, back in the old days, working with her was like a night off, because she was so easy to work with, and she was tiny. So it was she was very light on her feet and everything, very flexible. She was one of the only people that I used to do a move and I could almost bend her backwards in half. And she was, it makes me proud to see how far she's gone. And very sweet girl, very, when I knew her, she was very reserved and quiet and whatnot. And I want to say she was sort of religious. I want to say Seventh-day Adventist or something like that, but just kind of kept to herself. And I remember being in Brewer, I want to say it was Brewer, Maine. And we were sitting in our locker room was the women's shower stalls and in the locker room bathroom or something like that. And I remember saying to her, I'm like, I'm just going to enjoy you while I can, because you're not going to be here long. I knew she was destined to do something, because she was just so good. And so I said, I'm just going to enjoy you while I can. And she just kind of smiled at me, and that was kind of it. But I do remember that very distinctly, just sitting there and because we, matches with her were so easy. And you knew she was going some places. So so good for her. It's hard to imagine when I started wrestling her, she was I want to say 18 or 19. She was super young. Now I want to say she's in her 30s now, isn't she?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that was probably around 2011, maybe, that she was in the New England scene, on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And was she confident back then? Obviously you thought very highly of her. How did she feel about her skill at that time?
I think she was pretty good. I think she didn't show it, but I think she you can tell when somebody's not confident because they tend to even slightly hesitant. I'm like that sometimes.
Yeah.
She never was like that. So I think that I think she knew that she could do that. You know,
Yeah.
she could do it. And I think she knew, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a lot of self-confidence.
Right.
And she justifiably could do it. You know, she could because she could roll with anybody, you know. So I think that I remember hearing things about her being a little overconfident, but I'm like, have you seen her wrestle?
Right.
And for me, it's like
Mm.
I've wrestled her, so yeah. If she's a little overconfident, she can be because she can back it up. So I never another person that she actually reached out to me when Rob passed away because I remember my husband, and she was so sweet, and you know, she actually sent me like it sounds almost crass to say, but she sent me money, and it was like she didn't have to do that. And it was just like she was so, and she was in the WWE at that point. So to me, I have nothing bad to say about her. So people can, like I say, I know people have said in the past that she was overconfident. I never saw it, but then again, I I try to see see the best in people, and she was just like like I say, I always enjoyed her. She wasn't loud or obnoxious. She kept to herself, and was just really good at what she did.
Yeah. Was your husband a pro wrestling fan? How did he feel about, being with a pro wrestler when he first found out,
When he would introduce me to people, he'd be like, "This is my wife, Kathy. She's a wrestler." That was it. He loved it. It was, and that's why I kind of went with the, after he passed the Mistress Belmont thing or the Widow Belmont, because it was kind of like an homage to him because couldn't always make it, but he would try to come to see me wrestle when I was sort of in the area, and his face would just light up, and he was the one that pushed me. Like I had an Instagram for a while, and he was just like, "You got to post every day, post pictures of yourself, post it," and I'm just like, oh, because he was an artist, and so he was very prolific with Instagram, and actually made money from it, and um, he truly just loved. He would tell everybody, like, give him a double bicep. I'm like, Rob, please, but he was so proud. I think I always said, I don't know who's more proud of me, my husband or my dad. They both love to brag about my wrestling career, and it definitely made it a lot easier having somebody that was like so supportive, even though he remembered wrestling from like sadly his favorite wrestler was the Ultimate Warrior, from like back when I was a kid. It's like, oh, and so we would watch matches, and I'm like, okay, let's watch Randy Savage like work circles around the Ultimate Warrior, and you'll understand. And so I would walk him through some stuff, and he would be like, yeah, but he's still awesome. So, but yes, so he really enjoyed it. It was uh, like seeing him when we would go to shows and stuff like that, and he would sit in the crowd and watch and take pictures and stuff like that. He was I'm terrible at taking pictures, so they like a lot of the ones that I have of me wrestling and stuff like that was stuff that he took because I'm terrible about it. So yeah.
Well, some people don't have any support at all when it comes to the wrestling. So it's nice that you've had it over the years from your husband, from your father. You're kind of getting it from both sides. So that's and it creates great memories. So
It does. Yes.
How about injuries? Any injuries over the years?
I have to say I have been so lucky. I credit this to Steve, and Steve's training was, I always would joke that I could probably count on one hand how many times I had Steve for 4 years alive, and trained under him for 4 years. And I can count on one hand how many times in 4 years I would get in the ring and he'd be like, okay, what move do you want to learn? And he actually tried to teach me how to moonsault, which went nowhere. I tried many times. didn't work. But he was always about footwork and safety. And there have been so many times that I realized my training was so good because a girl will try to pick me up, like saying just something as simple as a body slam. And if she's not strong enough and she dumps me, I know enough to be able to tuck and roll through it, and I've avoided landing on my head. So I was, like I say, I was so lucky in that I was taught safety, respect for not only myself, but for the person you're working with. You're putting your body in somebody else's hands to treat you carefully, And so I'm happy to say that I've never hurt somebody. I mean, there's been a couple of times I've probably thrown a little tater or something like that. We all have, but I've also never been injured myself. I've had to, you have things that go wrong, I've taken a bad bump and your back or something like that. But I've never had to take time off for an injury. So I think a lot of it has to do with, the vast majority is like my training. I had really good training that taught safety above everything. And also like my physicality. I've been going to the gym since I was 21. So, I take really good care of myself. So it's, so I've always said I never put myself in situations where I could be seriously injured. I think I try to be careful. Like I've never done a dive. Like I have no interest in doing dives because I feel like there's just too much room for error, And does it make me a little bit more of a boring wrestler? Yeah, maybe. But the thing is, I can honestly say in 20 years of wrestling, I never got hurt. So I think
I also don't think you've ever been accused of being a boring wrestler either. So
I do have to say, I have to admit that I have something that still affects me. When I first was training, I was learning to, as we say, going into the ring the hard way. You're standing on the outside, you grab the top rope from the outside, and somebody will kind of push the rope out and kind of make it look like they're popping you over the top rope. I was trying to learn that, going into the ring the hard way. And I kept, instead of landing flat on my back and then popping up to a seated position, I kept landing seated and gave myself a concussion. And still kept going because I was determined to learn it because I learn by repetition. And so I still occasionally will be doing stuff and I will see stars and I'm like, yeah, that's not good. I've had a couple of matches where, and it wasn't from hitting my head. It was from jarring my head.
Yeah.
Jarring my brain, I assume. So I've had I got a concussion when I first was training and I threw up all the whole 9 yards and everything. And it was never diagnosed, but I know that's what happened. And I still, like I say, will randomly see stars. So I know that's not good, but that's the extent of my injury. And it wasn't even like I said, it wasn't, anything, didn't break a bone or anything, but so I guess I have been injured, but not, I'm not terribly worried about it.
Yeah.
So.
How about some of the characteristics of the Belmont character? Signature moves, your finisher move, your entrance music. Kind of talk about some of that stuff.
I remember when I first started, I wanted my own music. I didn't want to have to, use pre-recorded music. So I wanted my own music. And at the time, I worked in a mailroom, and there was a DJ that worked in there, and he made my first the first music that I ever used. You can see it on old NECW stuff. And it was this really cool kind of, and it set a good beat for me. It set a good tone for when I came out. And I remember I had to stop using it because the guy that created it, his DJ name was Broadcast. And I remember he had submitted it as to some talent agency or some company, and they ended up using it in a video game. So he's like, I can't let you use the music anymore. I'm like, no, that's good for you. But, and at that point I had met my husband, who was a musician, who then made my music. And so for the most part, I've pretty much always used, had my own original music. Like Rob had written a song for me. We called it The Long Kiss Goodnight. And So I used that for years. And what was the question was, I know that you had mentioned like music and stuff like that. What was the rest of the question?
Oh yeah, just some of the other characteristics of
Oh,
your gimmick. So finisher move, signature move, stuff like that.
I remember like trying to come up with a finishing move, and I remember Steve trying to. He showed me how to do Christopher Daniels finish, one of his finishes. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but I tried a bunch of different things, and then I saw Prince Albert do the Baldo bomb, and I was like, damn, that's a good move. And I said, and I remember being, at the time, I was living in the apartment above my little brother and his wife. They didn't have kids yet. And I remember coming down and being like, hey, walk me through the mechanics of this. And he did. We did it. And then I remember I actually wrestled Lish the next time. And I said, I want to try this as a finish. And she's like, okay. And we kind of set it up in the locker room. Then we went out and did it. And I was like, the crowd popped for it. And I was like, well, I guess this is it. So that's pretty much, typically I can do that with a, smaller girl. But if I wrestle somebody that's a lot bigger than me, I want to say I can't even remember who gave it to me. Somebody suggested I do a Cobra clutch bomb. And so I started using that for like basically girls that were bigger than me that I couldn't lift up above my head. So so that's pretty much, like I said, I can't even remember where that one came from, but I remember distinctly being in my little brother's living room walking through the mechanics of the Baldo bomb. I never gave it a name because I didn't feel like it was, I already had a name. So and then pretty much a lot of stuff was just came out of I did a lot in the beginning. I did a lot of stuff like my favorite wrestler of all time is Mr. Perfect. I loved just watching, Kurt Hennig sell and just everything that he did. And followed closely in second place by Randy Savage. So I took a lot from, for a while I was doing I would say it's not a fisherman suplex, it's a perfect plex. I would do Mr. Perfect's little suplex there. I tended to, like I said, most of my stuff was pretty basic. I always said I love to take things instead of give things. Like I'll take big bumps, but I won't really give big bumps. So, and we kind of talked about the, the growth of the character. You always, you pick little things along the way. You see stuff that you like, and you never want to just copy somebody, but you try to incorporate, parts of some people into what you're doing. So
Now a 3-part question here.
Okay.
So Mount Rushmore, obviously Mount Rushmore of wrestling. You could look at it different ways.
Okay.
Whether it's your personal favorites or
Okay.
whoever made the most money. There's different ways you could do it. Obviously.
Yeah.
Let's do 3 Mount Rushmores.
Okay.
So the top 4 New England male talents, in your opinion, over the years, any era.
Okay.
We'll start with that one.
All right. Obviously, Steve Bradley has to be on there. Alex Arion.
The Golden Greek.
The Golden Greek. Let's see. Eddie Edwards. And I do have to say, I know this one might be a little controversial. Brian Fury. I know a lot of it, a few years ago, I remember I was at work and got a message saying, have you seen what's going on Me Too? And I'm like, nah. And I fell down a rabbit hole, but I still say, regardless of anything he's done, whatever, it's still a talented guy, super talented, so I probably, for me, when I came up, those 4 guys, because they were like they were the foundation of WFA, Steve's promotion. And obviously I'm partial to Steve, and Al was like his right hand, Alex Arion, and Eddie Edwards. You could just you could watch him and be like, yeah, this guy's going places.
Yeah.
And Brian Fury was just a solid, excellent baby face, just watching him. And he was, and obviously he ran Walter Kowalski's school after, after a few iterations there. He was the trainer there. So yeah. So that would be my, for guys. Yeah, there we go.
All right. And then the second one, New England Women's Wrestling, Mount Rushmore.
Oh, geez. Nikki Rocks, Lish, Davey N, Mercedes KV.
Awesome. That was quick.
Oh, yeah, that was quick. There's no doubt about it. Because, I mean, and especially, the most prominent one would have to be Nikki Rocks. But nothing but love and respect for those 4 women. So
awesome. And then Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling. So any era, some of your favorites over the years.
Mr. Perfect, Randy Savage, Jake the Snake, Sherry Martel.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah. And the thing is, I never, for me, a lot of people you talk to, they're like, oh, Hulk Hogan. I hated Hulk Hogan. I always liked the bad guys for some reason. Like growing up, one of my favorite wrestlers, $1 Million Man. And I was always cranked up because he never got the, obviously at the end of the feud, the good guy wins. He never won. I was like, I love Ted DiBiase. I thought he had that great laugh and everything, but yeah. So probably, if there was a 5th place, it would be Ted DiBiase. But yeah, probably Mr. Perfect, Randy Savage, Jake the Snake, Sensational Sherry.
Honorable mention for Ted DiBiase.
Yes, honorable mention.
All right. Veda Scott, memories of Veda Scott.
Oh, yes. We had a very short-lived tag team called Freaks and Geeks. Love Veda Scott. She is she's a little shorter than me, and I find her to be adorable. And she was I had a lot of fun working with her. She was very we fed off each other's energy, kind of like our creativity was really well balanced. And I wrestled her a couple of times, and then was a tag team with her once or twice. I think no, it wasn't WSU, but it might have been it was a promotion out of New Jersey that she and I were a tag team. But yeah, is she still around? She's got to still be wrestling.
She is around. I'm not sure which promotion, but yes, I've seen her on social media. Yep.
Yeah. And nothing but nice things to say about her too. She was a great girl. Really, I always enjoyed it when our paths crossed. And the thing is, our paths only crossed a few times, but I always enjoyed, just hanging out with her in the back. Cool person to talk to.
So we talked about it a little bit. 2010 New England Championship Wrestling, the big steel cage match against Alexis Nevaeh. Go back to that night. You said you were both a little nervous, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Being such a big match and a cage match could be dangerous. After the fact, the match is over. You guys go to the back. What's the conversation look like?
I remember when I was going to the back, I've watched it a couple of times. Because I watch it and I'm like, oh, I took too long doing this or whatever. You critical of yourself. But I remember when I was walking up the ramp, Sean Gorman stopped me and he said, turn around. So I stopped and turned around. And the crowd, I think the crowd was tired. So there wasn't a ton of people there. It was hot. It was in August. That was on a Sunday. And for some reason, I think it was an anniversary show or something, but we had a show Saturday and Sunday. And my cage match was the very last match on Sunday. And so a lot of people had left. People were tired. 2 days of wrestling was a lot. And so there wasn't a ton of people there. But I remember I turned around and they gave me an ovation. And because Lish had already left, and I stayed, I had blood pouring down my face. I had taken an aspirin a day for a week. So my blood was super thin. So I was just pouring blood. I remember Sean Gorman said, it smells like a penny out here. you smell the nickel in in my blood. And he said, turn around. And I turned around and the crowd gave me a standing ovation. And I remember, I think it was Kyle White was to my left. I was on a ramp. It had this really great stage setup. Was halfway up the ramp, and Kyle was standing next to me, and he said, "He's watching you," meaning Steve. And I started to lose it. And I went to the back, and I realized that I would have made Steve proud. I was very, that was when I was coming out of it. I was like, I said, we fucking killed it. I felt like we had done a good job because, there's been I've had a lot of matches where people come back and be like, that's a pretty good match. I'm like, I was in it and it was not a good match. But I was in that, and I said, I was in it and it was a good match. And so we went to the back, and I remember just as soon as I went through the curtain, Lish was there, and we hugged each other. And I think I probably cried because it was a good match. And I thanked her. She thanked me. And it was just like, in a way, I was sad that it was over, but I had this great sense of accomplishment, Right. And I felt, for me, I still feel, not because it was a cage match, but just because of the way everything kind of flowed. And it was the culmination of I'd cut her hair. We'd attacked each other. I had choked her out with, an electrical cord, and just all these things that had kind of led up to it. And it was just this, like I say, it was a very, very wonderful sense of accomplishment, And I went out onto the fire escape and just kind of had to take a deep breath, and because we were in a building that it was on you'd go up a fire escape to get into the backstage area. And I remember going out there and just kind of taking it just a couple of minutes to be by myself, and realizing that, I'd lost a title, but at the same time, it was like, it was in a good way. I was so proud of that moment, and it made me very happy.
Yeah, that'll be a match that will not soon be forgotten. One of the greatest matches in New England, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's I heard Sheldon Goldberg. I stumbled across something and heard him talking nicely about it. And obviously Sheldon was sitting right there and watched the whole thing. And it makes me, it brings me, it's nice to know that you'd be remembered that I did something, that kind of stands out in people's minds. And if that's all I'm remembered for, I'm cool with that. Yeah. It was a great match, and I'm happy and very proud of that. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I was there that night. I got to be there. I was in the crowd.
Oh, you were?
I was, yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a special night, to be a part of. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Memories of Ivy Fit.
Oh, she was another girl that I want to say the first time I ever came across her was NWA on Fire. And we wrestled a number of times, and I remember her telling me somebody was unkind to her because her English wasn't great. And I never had a problem with her, or with her, her way of speaking or whatever. She was like, she had all the makings of like a star. She, granted, all she had to do was like, obviously Spanish was her first language. But she was an amazing wrestler. And I'm like, it's one of those, like, where did you come from? And I always liked working with her because she was very athletic. She had ripped abs, and obviously took really good care of herself, and took wrestling very seriously. And I hope she's still wrestling. She's like I say, she had all the tools to be something, to go on to better things. So I'm hoping that she's still wrestling. I had deleted my Instagram, so I lost touch with a lot of people, but she was a extremely talented girl. Like I say, I hope she's still wrestling.
In 2017, I believe it was for Beyond Wrestling, you and Davienne teamed up against Jordan Grace and LuFisto.
Yes.
What was that like?
Honestly, intimidating. It's I have so much respect for LuFisto, and I had crossed paths with Jordan Grace a couple of times, and mostly like we didn't wrestle each other. We wrestled each other one-on-one once. and then we were in there was like I want to say one of the promotions they had brought her up for she was in a 6-woman tag, and I don't know if we even were in the ring together. We were on opposite sides, but I don't think our paths crossed in the ring. But she was somebody that, watching her from when she was first wrestling, you could see there was something there. And I love watching Jordan Grace on TV and being like, she became more of a bodybuilder. She was a little, this sweet little, that did, what was there? Her and Lufisto's tag team, Fat Ass White Girls, PAWG, I think, Fat Ass White Girls, something like that, and she's she can cut a promo and everything. And I think most of my interaction in that match was with Lufisto, and who I'd worked for a number of times, but never got to work with. But it was fun. Yeah. Like, we had a good time. I think it was a short match, if I remember correctly. It was a very short match, and I do remember taking a sort of like a power bomb onto the ring apron, which I was a little nervous about, but it ended up being fine. But yeah, it was two wonderful women that I have a lot of respect for.
How about memories of Taylor Hendricks?
Oh, love Taylor Hendricks. And I hoped I think I recently tried to look her up to make sure she was still wrestling. She was this sweet, bubbly girl. And she was another one of those that I just I took to her right away. I've wrestled her a number of times. She was always super creative and tried really hard. And she was somebody that I felt had all the tools. And I know she was in Ring of Honor for a long time. And then when that kind of went away, her opportunities weren't as good, which kind of surprised me, because I felt like she would have done really well. Like, the WWE could have made her into she could have been I hate to say it at the time, a diva, when during the diva era, she would have fit right in. But she was like just a genuinely nice person. Yeah. Fun to wrestle. I always enjoyed wrestling her, and we wrestled so many times, and nothing but lovely things to say about her. She was such a great person. I always enjoyed seeing her in the locker room. We would always just hang out and just chat with each other. It was great.
How about working with Solo Darling?
I loved working with Solo Darling. I remember the first time I saw her, she's shorter than I'm like 5'4", and she was probably like 5'2" or something like that. And I'm like, you are adorable. And she, I remember her wearing a tail, and I said, how about we do this? Can I give your tail like an Indian sunburn during the match? Ridiculous thing, And at that point, I was just I knew I wasn't going anywhere. So I was like, I'm just going to have fun when I wrestle. And so she was like, yeah. And she's like, I'll give you one after. I was like, yeah, okay. All right. I loved working with her. She's, I find her to be one of the most stunningly beautiful women. Like, in person, she is just gorgeous. And I'm like, you are adorable. And yeah, fun to wrestle. She was one of those that, when I first started working for, I think it was Beyond, when I went down there, my first match there was with Solo Darling. And I remember just being like, this girl's super cool, so we started hanging out. We just, we wrestled each other, but then we just kind of hung out, and I enjoyed her company. She's a really awesome person, fun to wrestle, easy to wrestle. So I think we wrestled once singly, and then I think we also were in a tag match for Beyond, I think on opposite sides again. So we only wrestled each other like maybe twice, but yeah, fun, really fun.
How about fan interactions over the years? Is there a fan interaction that stands out more than any other?
Off the top of my head, not really. For the longest while, I was always taught to make yourself a star. Like Steve always said, you like when I was wrestling for Steve, like John would wear a suit, and I would wear, dress pants and a suit jacket or something like that. I always tried to, he said, you want to carry yourself like a star. That's why I always tried to make sure that everything was just such like, I would never go to a wrestling show in my pajamas. It's just, I was trying to, you want to stand out. You want to look like a star. You want people to treat you like a star. And so because of that, because I was a heel, I would never, I would avoid fans at all costs. If they happened to, like, if they were waiting outside and there was no way I could get around them, I would, I'd stop. I'd be cordial. I wouldn't be rude to them by any means. And if they asked for an autograph, I'd give them one. But I would be like, my early for years, like nobody had a Mistress Belmont signature because it just didn't exist. I didn't even, when I started turning babyface, or they would have me sign things, I hadn't even, it's like my signature was terrible because I was like, I never sign anything, Mistress Belmont, because I don't sign anything. So it took me a little bit. Now, so then I just would write Belmont in a certain way, but it was, I still try to, once in a while, I would just for the hell of it, like if I was somewhere up in Maine or something like that, I'd go out at intermission and sign a few pictures or whatever. But otherwise, for the most part, I like to make myself rare. So
that's cool though. I mean, it kind of adds to the whole lure of the character, it's
yeah, great. That's I guess that was kind of my thought. So yeah.
So advice to a newcomer, somebody that's maybe on the fence, they're possibly thinking about getting into the business. What advice do you have for that individual?
Never, you started this interview off with something that I treasure above anything else. And you referred to me as one of the most respected wrestlers. And that's what means more to me than anything, is having respect. And that's kind of I remember, I think it was Brian Malone saying to me, Kathy, I like booking you because you just come in, you do your thing, you get paid, and you go home. You don't cause me any problems. You don't, I know a lot of places don't like booking girls because they're pains in the ass or whatever, but it's like, respect is something that is earned. And once you lose it, it's very hard to get back. And so I would say, try not to look at everything let's be honest, when I came up, it would be me and my opponent as the only two girls in a room full of dudes. You have to, I was married, so stuff didn't, and for the vast majority of my time in wrestling, I've been married. And so and the thing is, because I was older, I was able to, like I said, I was 27. So I was able to tune out the peripheral stuff and I was there because I wanted to wrestle. I wasn't there to because I had stars in my eyes or anything like that. I wanted to wrestle. And don't lose that sense of respect, because once you lose it, it's, yeah, you'll still get booked or whatever, but it's not the same. I felt like I knew that when Sheldon agreed to put the Triple W title on me, it wasn't because I was walking around half naked or anything like that. It was because I earned it, because they saw that I worked hard and I was trying really hard. And I hate minimizing a lot of things, but it's like, I remember the night that I won it, I had to go out, the same building in Quincy, the Quincy Armory. And I went out on the fire escape and I cried. And I remember Sean Gorman coming out and saying to me, he's like, "You okay?" And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, I'm fine. I said, it's nice to know, because I had friends that were wrestling that, they were kind of approached in a way that was unsavory. I'll say it nicely. And I remember saying to Sean at that point, I was like, it's nice to know that, they trusted me enough to put a title on me, not because I, did anything or, that was to influence them. I guess that's a nice way of putting it. And people came out and they were trying to talk to me. He's like, and he kept everybody back and just let me have my moment where I just kind of, because I was shaking and everything. Like winning that Triple W title, it meant, it was huge to me, and especially because the women that had won it, it was were very respected. Nikki Rocks, Lish, Tanya Lee, all these girls that had a lot of respect in the business, had held that, and so for me to have it, that was a big deal, and so it was very emotionally overwhelming. So my biggest thing for up and girls that are interested in it, it is a fun business. It's the challenge and the ability to. One of my favorite things is working with new girls, especially ones that are fresh out of it, that haven't really had that much experience, and being able to show them how fun wrestling can be. Wrestling, it can be so fun, and you can develop like wonderful relationships with people, friendships and whatnot. But don't ever lose that respect. Respect yourself, respect the business itself. Be mindful of your surroundings and people's perception and whatnot. And because unfortunately, people's perceptions can be, things can go south really easily, and you don't want that. And the fact that people can use my name and respect in the same sentences, that's huge to me. Yeah. It's like one of my biggest things. So.
And you bring up Tanya Lee. What are your memories of Tanya?
Oh, I remember that she was another one of those girls that she had it. She got it. And the boys, because it was her and I were the only two girls in the wrestling school. And there was several other guys, my little brother. And then there were a few others. And there was always new people that would filter in and filter out. But there was the same core group of people. And they would be so afraid to, guys would be afraid to get in there with her, because she was built like Lish. Like, it seems like the smaller they are, the harder they hit. She was they would say she is a crowbar. And but she was we really didn't have much of an interaction before we trained together, and she really helped me during my training, but then she just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. Yeah. And it's too bad, because she was so good.
Right. Yeah, she kind of vanished. I remember ring announcing a match between, I want to say it was Eddie Edwards and Tanya versus Nikki Rocks and DC.
Oh, yes.
And I remember ring announcing a couple of those. They had that a couple times, and then I never saw her again.
Yeah. It's too bad. She just kind of disappeared. It was very, very strange. And it's too bad, because she was such a talented girl.
Sure. Yeah. And how about Luscious Latasha, somebody you've worked with for many years? What are your memories of Luscious Latasha?
I love Latoya. She is like the sweetest girl.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, you're still okay. I see you just disappeared. Latoya is a wonderful girl. She so easy to work with. She's just one of those people that I'm like, what do you want to do? She's like, I don't know. What do you want to do? And I remember one time we were both up in the middle of nowhere in Maine, and I said, you want to have a dance off? And she's like, yeah. The crowd was not into it. I was into it, and she was into it, but the crowd was not into it. But it was fun. She and I have had so much fun, and she is. I love seeing Luscious Latasha anytime anytime I pass across. It's always delightful. She's such an awesome person.
Yeah. And you got in the ring one-on-one with Mickie James.
Yes.
Let's hear about that experience.
Let's see. Of course, it's super intimidating, because I want to say she either just left the WWE. I want to say she'd obviously, people were paying to see her. They weren't paying to see me. They were paying to see her. And I actually think I have a picture of her and I. She is actually probably 2 to 3 inches shorter than me. And I remember she had a little dog named Elvis. She was super nice. And we went over some stuff. And I do remember we wrestled, I want to say it was like 25 minutes. And I felt so bad, because by the end, when I don't know what she would call her finish, but it was something where she would hook me, and I kind of was supposed to give her a little boost, and I couldn't, because I was just gassed. I was breathing from my belly, and I was like, I could barely breathe. People don't that's like one of the things people don't understand about wrestling. It is the biggest form of cardio you can do because it's all up and down and moving around. And yeah, so if you don't have good cardio, like I say, for some reason, I could do, 12 to 15 minutes, but anything beyond that, you start getting it gets challenging. And when I think we went 25 minutes, and it was, at that point, I was just gassed. And so I felt bad that we didn't get the finish in. I do remember I got to have a conversation with Jerry Lawler that night because he was there. I want to say it might have been I don't know if that was a top rope show. I think it might have been. But either way, yeah, she was lovely. Of course, easy to work with. I remember reading about her in Pro Wrestling Illustrated when she was Alexis Lurie. And I remember I brought that up to her, and she was kind of surprised that I, knew who she was before, because most people know her as Mickie James. And yeah, just a lovely person to be around. Yeah. So yeah, she was great.
Memories of Casey Ray. Casey Ray,
love Casey Ray. And she, before she left wrestling, she gave me actually I'm wearing it today. It's kind of broken up and it's all disfigured because I wear it every day, but she gave it to me. She said it had a little dove on it. It's a bracelet with a little dove. And she's like, you were, unfortunately, sometimes there's, jealousy and cattiness and things like that. And she experienced some of that when she first started. And I know she was very guarded when she first met me. And I remember saying to her, because she hadn't been doing it for very long, but she was a gymnast. She was a former gymnast and was like, tiny little thing, but could fly around the ring like nobody's business. And I remember saying to her, well, what can you do? And I was the first person that didn't get in there and just kick the shit out of her, and I was in there and I was kind to her. And I always say that, I like to be the girl that, I will kick your ass, but then you'll thank me for being kind to you after. And she and I became really close. And because I liked her, and she was fun to work with, And I remember she, one of the first matches we had, she did this she threw me into the corner and did a backhand spring elbow into me. And obviously you're supposed to turn your face at the very least. And I took it right in the nose. And she was like, and then she put me in a headlock and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, I couldn't stop watching you. I'm like, who else I can't do a backflip if my life depended. You just did 3 of them coming at me. Loved working with her. And I could be so creative with her. And I felt like I had some really good matches with her. Yeah. Ones that I'd like to see that I remember being in thinking, this is fucking awesome. And they're nowhere to be found. So I'm disappointed that I don't get to see as many of them, because we had a couple of I remember actually I lost the Chaotic Women's title to her at one of the Cold Furies that they had. And I remember the match being really fun, really good. And the finish went perfectly. And I was like, man, I would kill to see that, but I have never once seen it. But if we had fun, and we had a whole little storyline. I came out and smeared makeup all over her face and stuff like that. She was always game for anything. So, I was always afraid I was because she was so little that I was so afraid I was going to hurt her or something like that if I threw her too hard or something like that. But she was always down. So, yeah, nothing but love for Casey Ray.
And was there somebody in the area, in the New England area specifically, that you always wanted to wrestle, but for whatever reason, schedules didn't align, or did you pretty much wrestle everybody you wanted to in the area?
There was one, Sarah Del Rey. I always wanted to wrestle Sarah Del Rey in the worst way. And I remember being on shows with her. I had so much respect for her. And just watching her wrestle was amazing to me. And I always wanted to so badly. And then she got snatched up. I think she's still training girls for the WWE. I'm not sure. Last I knew, that's what had become of her, because she kind of, obviously up and left and went to Florida, but she was kind of she was up here on the New England scene a lot when I first was coming up, and I was like, oh, I want to wrestle her, and never got the chance to. So yeah, and I have to say she's pretty much. I think that's the one name that comes to mind. Sarah Del Rey.
And how about for a dream match? So, any era, doesn't have to be New England's, could be from television, WWF. That one person, you against that one person.
Luna Vachon.
Awesome.
I know she probably was like a crowbar, but man, the two women obviously that I would love to wrestle would be Sensational Sherry and Luna Vachon. Either one of them, but probably Luna Vachon, just because she, I took inspiration from her in that I didn't come out to be the pretty girl. Neither did she. And, sometimes you have to work harder when that's not your goal. You have to, basically you have to put the emphasis on the, for me, it was like trying to, be entertaining and stuff like that. For her, it was the same thing. She could pretty much beat anybody's ass, man or woman, and never, kind of got the push she should have. But she was an amazing woman, and would love to have wrestled Luna Vachon.
How about memories of your former manager, Sean Gorman?
Sean Gorman, we have been all over the place. I feel like we've driven a million miles together. Such a great guy, great friend. We still keep in touch here and there. He's, I want to say he's either gotten married or is getting married. Doing really well. We were going to actually do one last run when I got hurt, and it was kind of like having that magic back. I could not have been. I don't think I could have. Because I wasn't good at talking on the, like talking with you. This is nice and easy for me. I can do this whenever, but in terms of being in front of people and trying to talk or like having a video camera in front of me and being given, you have to speak for, X amount of time and get out this point, and this point. I was terrible at it. And I was never one of those people that could stand in the mirror in the bathroom and do promos. I tried, couldn't do it. I would try making promos up in my head. I just couldn't do it. I needed somebody to speak for me. And it was one of those things that actually when I first started at Triple W, Sean Gorman was managing Tanya Lee, and they were going to kind of go in a different direction with her. And no, I actually think she left. Yeah, she just disappeared, and they were like, well, what do you want to do? And he kind of had seen me, and he's like, she's got a great character, does she talk? And they were kind of like, no, not really. And so that's kind of where it started. He actually asked if he could be my manager, and I was like, thank Christ, because I can't cut a promo if my life depended on it. So that's kind of where it started. And we had great chemistry together. He was always right there. If he had a spot, he was very good at remembering his spots. And the thing is, he also managed other people too. He managed, DC and Eddie Edwards. And so he had other things, so that's kind of like the oddball, but I felt like it was a great. He also came up with a lot of stuff for my character for a while when I was wearing the black hood, and he would come out and pull the black hood off. That was all his idea. And Widow Belmont was his idea. So, he's a very creative guy. And I especially like writing somewhere in this room here is the whole script of, and I hate talking like this, but the whole script of, when I won the title from Lish and, all the successive matches leading up to the cage match. And he wrote all that. And so I owe a lot to him, and, much respect. And, he's a great guy. So yes, still keep in touch with him, and he's doing well. I'm doing well. So it's a wonderful thing.
Any memories of Sammy Lane?
Sammy Lane, she and I have traveled a lot of places together. She, I love the dynamic of having a female. I don't want to say valet because she wasn't. She was a lot of times she was a tag partner, but also, kind of like somebody that would speak for me. We did the whole thing that started in NECW. It was was it the Daughters of Darkness, I believe. But yeah, she was like, I liked having a female as a manager. I thought that she did a great job talking, and she had this kind of attitude about her that was, she was better than everybody else, and it fit. It suited her. She's like a sweetheart too. And the thing is, like, I think the last time we went to New Jersey together. Done a lot of, gone all over the place together. And I really, I love Sammy Lane. She's a great girl, and like a genuinely good person, and like outside of wrestling too.
And what would you say is your greatest moment in the business? If you could pick one moment.
Oh, wow. Honestly, I would have to say probably winning the Triple W championship for the first time. I have to say that's probably when I beat Lish, because it was like I say, the sense of accomplishment was the fact that they trusted me enough to be, because I was always taught that the champion is the one that brings in the, you put asses in seats and you make the money. And I'm like, they're putting a lot of faith in in somebody that's maybe not as tested and tried out as much as somebody like, of say, Nikki Roxx's caliber. So it was like I was it was a huge honor. So probably winning that. I've held it a couple of times, I think. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. My dad would know, but I can't remember how many times I've held that title, but a couple of times. But the first time was definitely like it meant so much to me.
And in closing, fast forward many years from now, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered?
Just as somebody that was respected, above all, respected, cared about the business, and took care of the girls that she worked with. Like, I hope to my knowledge, there's nobody that can say I ever hurt them, because it's not something I did. I was trying to be very careful, because I learned to be safe, and we always say hit hard in safe places. And so, outside of that, I just want to be remembered as somebody that was entertaining and took care of the girls that I worked with and was respected.
Awesome. Kathy, thanks so much for joining us this week. It's been a pleasure to have you and take a deep dive into your career. For Mistress Belmont, I've been Joseph Bruen, and this has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Jim.